Charmed captivated millions of viewers around the world with its story of the three Hallowell sisters, witches battling the forces of evil. But behind the magical glow was a haunting reality, the heartbreaking tragedies of its cast members. From the untimely death of Tyler Christopher to the shocking accident that claimed David Keredine, the fates of many charmed stars left fans stunned. Let's uncover the stories of those actors who have passed on and honor the legacies they left behind. Let's go. Shannon Doherty as Prew Hallowell. Shannon Maria Doherty was born on April 12, 1971, in Memphis, Tennessee, and became an unforgettable face through her role as Prew Hallowell, the strong and resilient eldest sister of the witch trio fighting evil in Charmed. When she was 27 years old, Shannon brought her own sharpness and determination to Prew, turning the character into a symbol of female strength on screen. But off-screen, Shannon's life was filled with turmoil, heartbreak, and emotional scars. In her early 20s, Shannon faced deep wounds from her personal life. A whirlwind romance with Dean Factor ended with a restraining order after mutual allegations of violence. Just months later, she married Ashley Hamilton after only a few days of knowing him, but the marriage quickly fell apart amid drunken arguments and heated fights. While her personal life was in chaos, Shannon soared on television as Brenda Walsh in Beverly Hills, 90210. The pressures of fame, combined with her lateness and conflicts with co-stars, led to her being removed from the series after 4 seasons, leaving a painful mark on her career. In the years that followed, it seemed Shannon might have found stability when she married Rick Salomon, but that marriage, too, was annulled in less than a year, surrounded by scandals involving affairs and property disputes. She reached new heights again with Charmed, embodying Prew Hallowell, but professional success couldn't ease her loneliness. Tension on set, especially her feud with Alyssa Milano, ended with her bitter departure when Prew was killed off. Beneath the scandals was a woman yearning for a complete family, only to stumble repeatedly in love. Perhaps the most painful chapter came at the end of her life, when her marriage of over a decade to Kurt Iswarienko collapsed. Shannon filed for divorce in 2023 after discovering her husband's 2-year affair. The divorce spiraled into a long legal battle, forcing her to fight both advanced stage cancer and overwhelming emotional and financial exhaustion. Yet even then, she kept her dignity, concealing her despair as she shared her journey with fans through the Let's Be Clear podcast. Shannon Doherty took her last breath on July 13, 2024, at her Malibu home, a place that had been her pride, just as the stormy divorce was finally settled. At that time, her net worth was estimated at about $5 million, consisting mostly of the value of the Malibu house, royalties from Charmed and 90210, and a small art collection. This amount had been greatly diminished by the enormous medical expenses from nearly a decade battling cancer and the legal costs of her final divorce. Tyler Christopher as Anton. Tyler Christopher was born on November 11, 1972, in the suburbs of Joliet, Illinois, and once mesmerized viewers as Anton, a charming yet dangerous warlock in Charmed in the year 2000. When he was 28 years old, the spotlight of acting began to shine on him, but at the same time, darkness crept into his personal life. After that success, Tyler fell into the spiral of alcoholism and bipolar disorder. His brief marriage to Eva Longoria, followed by his wedding to Brienne Pedigo, seemed like they might help him regain balance, but rumors of relapse and fits of rage soon shattered the hope of family happiness. In 2019, just months after his wife filed for divorce, Tyler was arrested for public intoxication, found unconscious in an Uber. No longer the heartthrob of the screen, he became a name splashed across tabloids for scandals and missteps. In his final years, Tyler lived in isolation, struggling with declining health and finances. After a traumatic brain injury in 2019 nearly took his life, He returned to Hollywood determined to rebuild, but found only homelessness and silent nights on unfamiliar streets. His precarious existence, arrests for drunkenness, and a bitter legal fight with his own sister over guardianship only deepened his despair as his once golden career faded into memory. On October 31, 2023, Tyler Christopher passed away at the age of 50. The cause of death was determined to be positional asphyxia while in acute alcohol poisoning. His net worth at the time was estimated at around $3 million, mostly from a small property in California and royalties from General Hospital, though much of it had been eroded by medical bills, debts, and years of legal fees. Rebecca Balding as Elise Rothman. Rebecca Balding was born on September 21, 1948, in Little Rock, Arkansas, and became a familiar face to audiences as Elise Rothman in Charmed, the stern yet kind-hearted editor-in-chief of the Bay Mirror, who brought realism to the Hallowell family's world of magical upheaval. When she took on this role at 53, Rebecca infused Elise with both the wisdom and quiet sadness of someone who had spent years navigating between fleeting moments of glory and the bitter silences of an unpredictable career. From the earliest days of her profession, Rebecca felt the ruthless grind of Hollywood closing in. After earning attention for her role in soap in the late 1970s, she hoped it would open doors. But the offers grew fewer when she refused to engage in transactional relationships or submit to the unwritten rules of the industry. Time and again, Rebecca set aside bigger dreams to accept small parts in nameless projects, enduring long stretches when she all but disappeared from the screen. The financial strain weighed heavily, especially as those roles couldn't sustain a life in glamorous, costly Hollywood. Her marriage to producer James L. Conway, which began in 1981 after they met on the set of The Boogans, seemed at first to be her safe harbor. But beneath the surface, there were quiet tensions. Industry whispers spoke of widening rifts as Conway's career soared, while Rebecca increasingly faded into the background. Rumors swirled about a child from a previous relationship, a subject Rebecca never confirmed, which only deepened the air of mystery around her private life. She chose silence, willing to be misunderstood if it meant holding on to some final measure of peace. When she was invited back to the screen with Charmed in 2002, Rebecca saw it as one last chance to reaffirm herself. In the role of Elise Rothman, she conveyed the heart of a woman who had weathered life's storms with quiet strength. But behind the camera, she quietly battled loneliness and an illness that had already begun to take root, though she didn't yet know it. By the time she was diagnosed with ovarian cancer, Rebecca kept the news private, choosing instead to live simply in her modest home in suburban California. Rebecca Balding passed away on July 18, 2022, in Park City, Utah, ending a life of 73 years marked by dignity and quiet pride. At the time of her death, her net worth was estimated at about $1.2 million, most of it tied to her humble home and modest royalties from Charmed, Soap, and Lou Grant. Richard Lynch as Cronin. Richard Lynch was born on February 12, 1940, in Brooklyn, New York. A child of Irish heritage raised amid strict expectations and poverty, seemingly destined for a life of hardship. When he was 63, Lynch appeared in Charmed as Cronin, a ruthless and cold-hearted demon, his deeply scarred face telling the silent story of real-life wounds. In 1967, during a drug-fueled hallucination, Lynch set himself on fire in Central Park, leaving more than 70% of his body covered in burns. After that ordeal, he gave up drugs and turned to the stage as his salvation. Yet the shadows of his past clung to him. On set, he was accused of sudden bursts of anger, leading many directors to shy away from casting him in major projects after the 1990s. Off-screen, Lynch wrestled with broken relationships. His marriage to Beatrix crumbled after the sudden death of their son, Christopher, from pneumonia in 2005, a loss that haunted him ever after. His second marriage to Lily, too, was left only in sad memories and old photographs on his wall. In his final years, Lynch lived reclusively in his Yucca Valley home, surrounded by mementos from the horror films that had made his name, but now only served as reminders of a distant golden age. Public appearances became rare, visits from friends dwindled, and quiet solitude filled his remaining days. On June 19, 2012, Lynch was found dead in his home, likely from a heart attack 2 days prior. His body lay undisturbed in the kitchen until a concerned friend came to check on him. At the time of his death, his net worth was estimated at around $1.5 million, largely from property in California and residuals from his villainous roles in Halloween, 2007, and Charmed. Anne Haney as Aunt Gail Altman. Anne Ryan Haney was born on March 4, 1934, in Memphis, Tennessee, and became a beloved presence on screen as Aunt Gail Altman in Charmed when she was 65. A sweet-looking aunt whose kind exterior concealed hidden schemes. That role, small though it was, mirrored Anne's own life. A graceful, humorous woman who hid deep sorrow, tension, and the loneliness that marked her final years. Her marriage to John Haney, which began promisingly in their college days, quietly fell apart after years of growing rifts. Though they remained officially married until John's death in 1980, the public affair he had with a young actress left Anne with a humiliation she rarely spoke of. Behind her roles as the warm mother or dutiful wife, she was a woman swallowing her tears, striving to protect her child and maintain dignity before colleagues and the world. In the 1990s, Anne appeared in hits like Mrs. Doubtfire and Liar Liar, always managing a bright smile for the press. But inside, she was consumed by sorrow over her strained relationship with her only child. Unspoken tensions and unresolved words widened the distance between them, leaving Anne to face old age alone in a modest California home, comforted only by work and a few loyal friends. She quietly endured heart disease, emptiness, and depression without complaint. These were the final chapters of her screen career before illness forced her to step away. On May 26, 2001, Anne Haney passed away at 67 in the very home she had once hoped would be her sanctuary. At the time of her passing, her net worth was estimated at about $1 million, mostly from the unassuming house where she spent her last days, and small residuals from Mrs. Doubtfire, Liar Liar, Charmed, and other television roles. Billy Drago as Barbas. Billy Drago was born on November 30, 1945, in Hugoton, Kansas, and left a lasting mark on audiences through his role as Barbas, the demon of fear in Charmed. When he first stepped into the role at 53, Drago poured the shadows and hidden struggles of his own life into Barbas, making the character haunting and unforgettable. But beyond the screen, Drago's real life was filled with fears of a different kind. Loneliness, the weight of fame, and emotional burdens he always tried to hide. Success came early for Drago with his portrayal of Frank Nitti in The Untouchables, 1987. But that same role typecast him as a villain on screen. Drago longed to break out and play heroes, but Hollywood never gave him that chance. By the early 2000s, his career had stalled, overshadowed by baseless rumors of drug use and erratic behavior that made producers wary, even though no evidence ever surfaced. Over time, Drago withdrew, avoiding press events and red carpets, leaving behind the image of a mysterious man in real life. His marriage of more than 3 decades to actress Silvana Gallardo seemed to offer him peace. But after her death in 2012, Drago became almost entirely reclusive. A few close friends described him as living quietly in his aging California home, surrounded by horror film props and faded movie posters. His relationship with his children, particularly with his son Darren E. Burroughs, grew distant, strained by differences that time could not mend. In his final years, Drago battled declining health and persistent depression. He stopped appearing in public and took on no new roles. When he died on June 24, 2019, from complications following a stroke, his net worth was estimated at about $1.5 million, mostly from the modest value of his California home and small royalties from Charmed, The Untouchables, Delta Force 2, and various television projects. Henry Gibson as Sandman. Henry Gibson was born on September 21, 1935, in Germantown, Philadelphia, and became a memorable figure to Charmed fans as the Sandman, a supernatural being who brought dreams, but also a subtle unease that was hard to define. When he played the part at 68, Gibson drew on both his life experience and personal shadows, making the character both captivating and strange. Much like the Sandman, Gibson's life behind the scenes was filled with its own shades of gray, secrets hidden beneath the humor of a veteran comedian. After his peak with Nashville and the Blues Brothers, Gibson's career faded under rumors of a calculating temperament. Colleagues described him as charming yet scheming, sometimes willing to undermine others to protect his position. His personal life was equally troubled. The marriage that lasted over 40 years with Lois Geiger quietly cracked under the strain of his affairs, including a secret relationship that only after Lois's death became whispered gossip. The emotional distance between Gibson and his children grew from these fractures, creating tensions that were never fully resolved. Henry Gibson passed away on September 14, 2009, from cancer, just a week shy of his 74th birthday. He took his final breath in his California home. At the time, his net worth was estimated at about $2 million, mostly from the value of his house and his unique collection, but also leaving behind unresolved family disputes. Jeff Corey as council member. Jeff Corey was born on August 10, 1914, in Philadelphia, and became known to Charmed audiences as one of the elders, a magical council member who carried the dignity of a seasoned actor. When he took on this role at 86, Corey brought not only his masterful acting, but also the weight of the pain, tragedy, and loneliness he had known in his lifetime. Blacklisted during the McCarthy era for his political ties, Corey lost a decade of his prime career because he refused to betray colleagues under pressure. That emotional scar ran deep, turning him into a more closed, hardened man, both toward himself and others. After emerging from the shadow of politics, Corey became one of Hollywood's most influential acting teachers. But his teaching style, known for its severity and relentlessness, drew criticism. Some students crumbled under his extreme demands, products of his obsession with artistic truth and perfection. This not only isolated him professionally, but also widened the gap between him and his two children, who later publicly condemned his coldness and controlling ways. His personal life bore its own fractures, as his devotion to his craft consumed him, leaving behind a family where true closeness was lacking. Outwardly, he was a devoted husband to his wife, Hope, for 64 years, but inwardly he lived in a world of manuscripts, film relics, and memories of years spent on the margins. Jeff Corey died on August 16, 2002, at the age of 88, from complications following a fall. His net worth at the time was estimated at about $1 million, mostly from the value of a small California house, rare teaching manuscripts, and treasured film memorabilia. Frances Bay as Old Phoebe Hallowell. Frances Bay was born on January 1, 1919, in Manville, Alberta, to a family of Russian immigrants, and became a familiar face to audiences through her role as the older Phoebe Hallowell in Charmed. When she took on this role at 83, Frances brought to Old Phoebe the wisdom of experience, quiet sorrow, and her signature charm, creating a character that was both wise and touched by an unspoken sadness. But behind the beloved grandmotherly figures she portrayed on screen was a personal life marked by decades of loss. The greatest tragedy of Frances's life was the death of her only son in a car accident when he was just 23. Behind the smiles she showed on screen, she battled chronic depression, with sudden emotional collapses that sometimes forced her to pause filming to regain her composure. Though deeply loved by colleagues, she withdrew into her own world, declining most interviews and avoiding the spotlight unless absolutely necessary. A car accident in 2002 made Frances's final years even more challenging. She lost a leg, her health declined, and she became entirely dependent on caregivers. Yet she still tried to continue acting whenever possible, as if clinging to a last bit of light at the end of the road. Her roles in The Middle and The Pit and The Pendulum in her later career were not just work, but rare sources of comfort for a soul that had endured so much loss. Frances Bay passed away on September 15, 2011, at the age of 92, from complications of pneumonia. Those close to her believed that she had died of a broken heart long before, ever since the loss of her son. At the time of her passing, her net worth was estimated at about $1 million, mostly from a modest apartment in California and small royalties from her work in Happy Days, Seinfeld, and other projects. Scott Plank as Eric Lman. Scott Plank was born on November 11, 1958, in Washington, D.C., and is remembered for his role as Eric Lman, a charming but complex professor in Charmed. When he played the role at 40, Plank infused the character with a mysterious allure that reflected his own inner turmoil and struggles. Beneath the handsome appearance and confident air of a rising star was a soul constantly torn by his passion for the craft. Throughout his career, Plank was respected as a talented actor, but constant clashes with directors and writers over creative control cost him many key opportunities. Over time, rumors began to swirl about substance use and wild nights spiraling out of control, further straining his professional relationships. Although he had graced the Broadway stage and worked alongside stars like Sean Penn in both theater and film, Plank never found lasting peace. He lived modestly in a small Los Angeles apartment, steering clear of the glamour often associated with Hollywood. In his final years, he tried to regain balance through smaller roles and independent artistic projects, but his inner battles never truly let him go. On October 24, 2002, at just 43 years old, Scott Plank died following a serious car accident. His net worth at the time was estimated at about $800,000, including a small apartment in Los Angeles, a beloved vintage car, and royalties from his most memorable roles. Larry Holden as Jeff Carlton. Larry Holden was born on May 15, 1961, in Framingham, Massachusetts, and left an impression on Charmed fans as Jeff Carlton, a man caught in the aftermath of magic's consequences. When he took on this role at 38, Holden brought to the character the tension of someone torn between the desire to control his destiny and the helplessness of facing forces beyond his reach, echoing his own inner struggles. Behind the success of his roles in Memento, Batman Begins, and Insomnia, Holden privately battled bipolar disorder. Rumors of erratic behavior and on-set conflicts followed him throughout his career, causing major opportunities to slip away. His personal relationships were no more peaceful. His first marriage to Lee Ann Pope ended quietly, and although he later found companionship with Hannah Christiansen, emotional instability and dependence on painkillers slowly eroded their bond. In his final years, Holden lived a solitary life between Massachusetts and Norway, where he once opened a film production office. He immersed himself in independent film projects and dreamed of building a collection of vintage cars, a dream that never fully materialized. Though he remained creatively active, producing and directing his own films, his internal battles gradually drained his strength and joy. Larry Holden passed away on February 13, 2011, at the age of 49, from cancer. At the time of his death, His net worth was estimated at about $1 million, including a small home in the U.S., his unfinished vintage car collection, and royalties from the works that had defined his career. David Keredine as Tempest. David Keredine was born on December 8, 1936, in Hollywood, California, the eldest son of legendary actor John Keredine. When he appeared in Charmed at the age of 62 as Tempest, a powerful demon with control over time, he brought to the role a chilling authority and complexity that mirrored his own tumultuous life off-screen. Keredine rose to fame through the series Kung Fu and later with Kill Bill, but his career was always shadowed by scandal. He was arrested multiple times for drug use, public disturbances, and driving under the influence. His work was interrupted by erratic behavior, disappearing without explanation from film sets or becoming entangled in legal troubles. His personal life was even more chaotic. 5 failed marriages, notorious affairs, and frequent allegations of abuse or lawsuits over financial disputes. In his final years, Keredine sought redemption through international projects and action roles, but his lavish lifestyle, split between properties in California and Thailand, and reckless spending drained his wealth. He often found himself alone in sprawling mansions, burdened by debt and broken relationships. His death on June 3, 2009, in a Bangkok hotel sent shockwaves around the world. He was found dead under controversial circumstances, the cause determined to be asphyxiation linked to autoerotic behavior. At the time of his death, Keredine's net worth was estimated at just $500,000 after his properties in California and Thailand had been sold off to cover debts. What remained was the royalties from Kill Bill and other works, the legacy of a gifted artist whose life was consumed by his past and his own demons. Gilden as Finnegan. Michael Gilden was born on September 22, 1962, in Los Angeles, California, a city of bright lights where he spent his life struggling against prejudice and pain. When he appeared in Charmed at 41 as Finnegan, it was a small role, but one that deeply reflected his reality. A man small in stature, but with a fierce desire to be seen and valued for who he truly was. Gilden's personal life was no less stormy. Before marrying Meredith Eaton, whom he once believed to be his soulmate, he endured a failed marriage with Elena Fondacaro. His marriage to Eaton began with hope, but was gradually eroded by invisible pressures, overwhelming expectations, a haunting fear of not being recognized, and conflicts that could not be resolved. Close friends described him as acutely sensitive, tormented by the fear of rejection, a fear rooted in childhood, in a world that always looked at him differently. In his final years, Gilden tried to hold on to his acting career while exploring work in finance to find a way out of his struggles. But the harshness of the entertainment industry and the deep emotional scars he carried left him exhausted. He lived quietly in a small Los Angeles apartment. On December 5, 2006, Gilden ended his life in that apartment at the age of 44. His death shocked many as he was gone far too soon. His net worth at the time was estimated at about $300,000, consisting of minor royalties from Star Wars, Episode 6, a few personal belongings, and many unfulfilled dreams. William Morgan Shepard as Merrill. William Morgan Shepard was born on August 24, 1932, in London. When he appeared in Charmed at 71 as Merrill, a powerful, enigmatic sorcerer, he brought to the character the layers of complexity that also defined his real life, an intelligent, passionate man who could also be defiant and difficult. Off-stage, Shepard was known as a brilliant but challenging artist, often clashing with directors over interpretations and frequently rewriting dialogue to suit his own philosophy. His first marriage ended when he became involved in a high-profile affair with a young actress, a scandal that distanced him from his family and seriously damaged his public image. His relationship with his son, Mark Shepard, a television star, was often tense as the two competed fiercely in their careers, though they did at times collaborate on screen. In his later years, Shepherd divided his time between the UK and the US, sometimes to manage legal or tax issues, other times in search of peace. He lived among rooms filled with theatrical and film memorabilia, but friends noted he grew increasingly lonely, haunted by his own shadow and regrets. Despite being celebrated on many great stages, he faced his battle with cancer quietly and alone. William Morgan Shepherd passed away on January 6, 2018, in Los Angeles, of 86. His net was estimated at about $2 million, made up of properties in the UK and a collection of film and theater memorabilia. Gray, as elder. Gray was born on September 7, 1930, Rico. When he played in Charmed at the age of 9, he brought to the role the presence of torn between duty and figure that reflected the man himself, but often caught conflicting tides. Gray's career spanned over 50 years, with roles ranging from the cold-hearted businessman in Traitors to the kind father in My Big Fat Greek Wedding. Yet behind that calm exterior, Gray once faced a serious scandal in the 1990s when he clashed fiercely with a prominent Canadian director. The fallout nearly blacklisted him from major projects in his home country, pushing him to shift his focus to work in the United States. Meanwhile, there were persistent rumors of him being overly controlling and entangled in a complex relationship with a much younger actress, claims he never publicly addressed. Gray chose to live a private life. He never married and rarely spoke about his personal affairs. He spent his final years between two homes in Los Angeles and Toronto, where he built an art collection as a way to fill the quiet spaces of solitude. In his last years, Gray battled cancer quietly and alone. Bruce Gray passed away on December 13, 2017, at the age of 81. His net worth was estimated at about $2 million, made up of properties in Los Angeles and Toronto and a valuable art collection. The tragic stories of the Charmed cast are not just memories of talent. They serve as reminders of the shadows that often hide behind the glow of fame. Though they are gone, their legacies live on in the hearts of fans. Which Charmed role touched you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like and share to honor these stars.